And I got asked a question recently, and um, that I think a lot about, and I wanted to make an episode of this that you can relate to. So they asked the question: Should I should I work out early in the morning or after work? I know it's the right thing to do, but I don't always follow through. Now, I think on the surface of that question, right, it sounds like a simple scheduling question: morning or evening? But if you've ever been in that situation, you know it's not always about the clock. It goes a layer deeper than that. It's about the feeling that if you can't do it perfectly, if you can't wake up early, smash that session, nail that routine down, then maybe it's not worth doing it all. Why bother? And that in itself is the exact trap that I want to talk about today. Because I bet that you've lived this in some shape or another. You miss your morning workout, and instead of training after work, you might skip the whole day. Or you plan to meal prep all week, but Monday night for some reason got away from you. So you ordered out, and suddenly the whole week feels lost and you're behind. I like to use the example too of maybe you want to write, study, practice, whatever your goal is, but because you don't give it perfect conditions, you didn't give it anything. Does that sound familiar? This is what psychologists call all or nothing thinking. And it's one of the biggest killers of progress because the reality is, I'm sure everyone listening here can attest to this perfectly. Um, that perfect day rarely happens. The stars rarely align. And if your plan only works when everything is perfect, then I'm here to tell you your plan doesn't work. And there's a quote from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, that I love, and you all know I love it too. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And your systems need to be flexible enough to hold when life isn't perfect for you. And that's where this 80% rule comes in. The 80% rule is very simple. Stop aiming for 100%. Stop chasing perfection. Instead, aim for about 80%. Good enough most of the time, consistently. So 80% done, I'm a true believer of this. 80% done beats 100% planned or 100% imagined. An 80% workout done at 6 p.m., 100% it beats the perfect 6 a.m. session that you skipped. An 80% healthy meal thrown together quickly beats the perfect plan that just never happened in the end. An 80% consistency over months and years beats 100% intensity for 2 weeks before you just burn yourself out. And I can tell you from coaching health clients, working with athletes, the ones who succeed long term aren't the ones who chase perfect. They're the ones who master showing up at 80% and doing that again and doing that again and doing that again. But here's the tension we encounter. 80% doesn't sound cool. It doesn't. Hey, how did you get on today? Oh, I gave 80% effort. Oh, yeah. Okay, good for you. Versus, oh, I gave it 110%. Your manager or any sports team or a pep talk you're getting doesn't say, go on out there and give it 80%, everybody. Leave it all on the line. That doesn't happen. So it's a little bit unfamiliar. Nobody brags about being pretty good most of the time. Social media is full of those highlight reels, those extreme discipline stories that we come across. People acting like if you're not chasing it perfectly, if you're not grinding, like you're just waste. Sorry, I'm going to try and connect to my 5G. I think I might have some internet issues, but I think I'm now back. Hopefully, I didn't get interrupted. when I was giving you all my 80% pep talk. Um, but where was I? You know, a lot of people tell you that if you're not going 100%, are you just wasting your time? But I've seen the opposite, right? The ones who chase 100% usually, uh, like some of the time anyway, I'm not going to say always too binary, but they can end up at zero. And I think the ones who embrace 80% keep moving forward. So in this episode, I want to show you why 80% is not a compromise. It's actually a really smart way for building consistency. So we're going to talk about a lot. How perfectionism shows up in your health, your training, and your life. The psychology of why 100% tends to fail and why 80% is a better route to go. And I'm going to give you some practical strategies to reframe your mindset. Finally, as always, we're going to look at some coaching tools that you can apply right away, whether you're training, eating, working, or just trying to be more consistent. So by the end, you'll see the real question isn't, should I work out in the morning or the evening? It isn't even, did I do it perfectly? The real question is, did I show up in some way most of the time? So if you've been stuck in that cycle of aiming high, then slipping, then quitting altogether, this episode is definitely for you. Because it's not about doing more. It's not about being perfect. It's just about mastering the good enough. The 80% that's sustainable, repeatable, and is just so applicable to the um just the busy lives that we do indeed live. What does perfectionism, this all or nothing mindset that we have, what does it actually look like in your day to day life? Now, I'm going to give very high level examples. Feel free to drop me messages with specific examples. Like, what is perfectionism to you? What does that all or nothing mindset mean for you in an everyday life? Hopefully, these register and relate. You can relate to these. If not, yeah, please just let me know your thoughts as well. Would love to hear it. All right. Okay. I think, as always, when it comes to the perfectionism, all or nothing, if you can't see it or name it, you then can't change it. So the first thing is to be able to identify. And I think it's fair to say a lot of us don't even realize that we're living in it, or at least a good portion could go by. You might look back on aspects of your life and be like, how was I operating like that? Whether it's a habit you were trying to build, but you were in like a mundane or a rut, or maybe it was a job you had and then you got out of it and realized, wow, why was I um, stuck in that for so long? I didn't even realize what was going on. And here are some more kind of common examples. Maybe you might miss, we'll say, your morning alarm for the gym. And instead of training later in the day, then you just don't. You just write off the whole day. You say to yourself, I'll start again tomorrow. So one slip trying to attain that 100% early morning workout erases the entire effort for the day. Or you eat one meal that doesn't fit your plan and then you tell yourself, I've blown it. Then you might spiral. That maybe that one burger you've had might turn into a weekend of, if you want to say, eating off track, or maybe eating foods that aren't conducive to the goals you're trying to build, because you said in your head that the perfect streak was already broken. Or if you'd planned to meditate for 20 minutes, but you only have five, like instead of using those 5 minutes, you just do nothing and you say, well, it's not even worth it. It's not enough time. I scheduled 20. And then maybe another example, you tell yourself about a project you're going to work on for 2 hours, but then you have only 20 minutes. And then you say, I have to wait. I'm going to wait like more time. What can I do in 20 minutes? Nothing. And that 20 minutes could have actually mattered. But the perfectionist in you said no. So if any of those sound familiar, you're not alone. This is the perfection trap. The belief just that if it's not perfect, it doesn't count. And that doesn't just show up in health or productivity. It creeps into everyday parts of life, really. If you think about relationships, not that I'm a relationship or expert or anything like that, but in relationships, If I can't be fully present every evening or fully there, why bother invest? Or if you're working, if I can't deliver the absolute best project, I don't want to do it at all. And the 80% rule actually is very much a work mantra too. Like you can do 80, like you can get to 80%, and then to get like the final 20% might take you as long as it took you to get to the 80% or even longer. And is it even worth it? Sometimes a minimal viable product is all you need. Or in learning, I fall into this one. Maybe you do too. I love gathering knowledge, but sometimes I say to myself, oh, if I can't master it or master it in a quick enough time frame, I'm just not going to do it. Like there are internal narratives that I have to battle with myself. So I hope you can see the pattern. It's all or nothing. If you can't hit it 100%, you default to zero. Now, here's the cost. When you live like this, your progress always feels fragile. You might have a great week, but it only takes one bad day to derail everything. You might hit your streak for a month, but you missed one workout and that convinces you that you've lost all your progress. I see this all the time with clients. One woman I worked with had a streak of like 26 days or something of hitting their nutrition goals. Day 27 came around, didn't hit it. Do you know what she said? Like the response was, I blew it. The streak is ruined. What's the point? And instead of bouncing back on day 28, it prolongs for weeks after that. Another one, I've encountered this myself as well, but in my coaching practice too, is we might get onto technology in a little bit, but things like trackers, like step trackers in particular. Like I have had people, I've done this myself. I went out for a walk, say my daily walk I have scheduled great. The next thing I'm on my walk 10 or 15 minutes and I'm like, oh no, I forgot my tracker, I forgot my watch. Oh, these steps don't count. And I'm in my head, fully thinking the steps don't count. When in reality, I am technically doing the steps. They're just not being put on a tracker. They still count. No, that's sorry. I'm gone on a slight tangent, but that's just something I do encounter, especially with technology too. We want to see data, everything tracked. But sometimes knowing that we're doing the thing is what really counts. Like I still went for my walk that day, but because I didn't have a number to go with it, I felt like I didn't even go for my walk, which is totally untrue. Anyway, I digress. I think they're just examples of the tragedy of perfectionism. It takes one off day and turns it into like a potential wasted month. And I see where that leads to. Like they miss one training session, instead of adjusting, they tend to spiral, convince themselves that they're going soft or they're slipping, like they've lost their edge. But then when you zoom out, that one missed session barely matters unless you let it cascade in your head. This is why the 80% rule is such a lifeline. Because when you expect 100%, every small slip can feel like a catastrophe. But when you anchor yourself to 80%, you build in margin. You expect imperfection. You allow yourself to, well, just to be human, to be honest. So let me ask you directly. How many times have you given up on something? A workout plan, a diet, a routine, and not because you couldn't do it at all, but because you couldn't do it perfectly. If you're nodding along right now, this could be your sign, you know? You're not not achieving those goals because you're inconsistent. You might be, if you want to call it failing, or you might be feeling this way because your definition of success is too rigid. And 100%, it just isn't realistic anyway. Even elite athletes don't train at 100% every single day. Even top performers miss sessions, eat off plan, have days where they're off their game. The difference is they don't let that one day erase the story they've built and the story that they want to continue to build. So if you've been stuck in this cycle of starting strong, slipping once, then quitting, nothing wrong with you. You might, though, be caught in this perfectionism, if you want to call it a warped, time warp loop, whatever you want to call it. And as always, I sound like a pessimist, but the good news is there, folks. Once you see it, you can change it. Because the real win isn't perfectionism now. The real win is consistency. And consistency lives in that 80% zone. So now that you can see what the perfection trap looks like, I do want to dive a bit deeper. And as always, dive into the psychology, like why your brain does that in the first place. Because I think if you understand the psychology, then now you'll know what to prepare for. You'll know how to outsmart it in a lot of ways. There definitely will be some kind of repeat terms coming up here, but I hope you're seeing like the whole interconnected thing between the mind and the body when it comes to our health as well. Before I do jump into that, Paul has just wrote in saying, as a type A person, the lifestyle of perfectionism has left me with a lot of unfinished projects. Work was fine, but at home, I get frozen when overwhelmed. And then I can't even count how many times. Okay, so Paula, for the last few, you were kind of talking along with me. So I got to do better to be able to read those in real time. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and ideas. And it definitely can leave this whole thing of perfectionism can leave a lot of unfinished projects for us as well. And that is tying into what I want to talk about. Like, why do we keep falling into this perfection trap? What does our brain do? Why does it tell us that if it's not 100%, it's worthless? And I think you know where I'm going with this first one, that all or nothing thinking. So psychologists call this the cognitive distortion. Basically, when you take a complex situation, you try to reduce it to two extremes. That is something you can start to notice in life. With a lot of things, we like to make things binary, one side or the other side. Uh, you have to can't stay on the fence anymore. You'll be engaging in complex thinking. Are you kidding me, Podge? Um, Side note, my friends sometimes mock me, calling me a fence sitter because it's like when we're having discussions about things, I can see like two sides, or I've even said like I don't actually have an opinion. I don't know enough about that to be able to give an opinion. And that irks them a little bit because people want binary, right? They want you to pick a side, choose a team. But when it comes to some complex issues, I would say health is definitely a complex issue. I wouldn't think there's any right or wrong or binary to an extent. Do you know, I think it's pretty subjective, and we have to engage in some cognitive thinking as well. And I mean, this all or nothing thinking when it comes to our health shows up everywhere. You didn't eat perfectly, so you blew it, right? You didn't work out, so now you're lazy. You didn't deliver flawless work, so now you're a failure. So the problem with this all or nothing thinking is that it erases that fence sitting that I love, that middle ground essentially. And it just blinds you to like the 80% where progress actually lives. The second point is around the idea of perfectionism and control. So there is research out there to show that perfectionism is often about control. Like if you can keep everything perfect, then you might feel safe. But the second something slips, you feel like the whole thing is out of control. This is why one mistake can feel catastrophic to you. It's not just about the day, it's about the story you tell yourself, that internal narrative. If I can't have full control of this, it doesn't even count for me. But here's the paradox. The more you chase control, the less consistent you might become. Because life will always destruct you. Always. Number 3 is the law of diminishing returns. So here's the science side. In training, nutrition, work, the difference between 80%, as I've mentioned to earlier, and 100%, difference between those efforts is often very small in terms of results, but massive in terms of cost. Think about workouts. You can make 90% of your gains by showing up consistently at a sustainable intensity. That last 10%, the push to perfection, comes with like exponentially more fatigue, risk, and burnout. Same is true for nutrition. Eating well. You might have actually heard nutritionists or people in that space say, try aim to eat well 80% of the time. And the reason they say that is because that gets you most of the benefits. You're eating well most of the time. Trying to be perfect with every single bite, that's going to be a lot harder. That's where burnout might show up. That's where you might feel a sense of guilt if you go off your plan. Um, it's just hard to keep that sustainable. So your brain convinces you that 100% is better. The research, however, shows that 80% is usually more effective long term. Number 4 is the idea of identity loops. This one is huge. Every time you aim for 100% and inevitably miss, you're then, without you even maybe knowing it, you're just reinforcing the identity of, I'm inconsistent. I can't stick to things. But when you aim for 80%, you now create a system where small slips do not break you. You reinforce the identity of, I'm the kind of person who shows up even when it's not perfect. That's another reason why the 80% rule is so powerful, because it builds a self-concept of things like consistency versus fragility. Number 5 is the psychology of wins. So there's also something called the progress principle. Harvard researchers Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer found that the single biggest motivator for people is money. No, I'm just kidding. So it isn't, I mean, it isn't money. It isn't. It isn't money, recognition, or pressure. It's the feeling of making progress. Now, when you choose perfection, you might rob yourself of that. Because the second that you're not perfect, you might engage in that all or nothing thinking and decide that you failed. You can't see the progress. When you embrace 80%, you give yourself wins every day. They may be small, but they stack up. Compound interest. And that sense of progress fuels more progress. Remember, sometimes action precedes motivation, from an earlier talk we've done. So let's just take a step back for a second. Why does the 80% rule work from a psychological perspective? Because it breaks the distortion of all or nothing thinking, because it avoids the trap of diminishing returns, because it builds identity around consistency, and because it lets you experience progress, which is the thing that actually keeps you motivated long term. That's why the 80% rule isn't a compromise. It's science, it's psychology, it's how you build something that is sustainable over the long term. So now we know, knowing is one thing, practicing is another thing. So that's where I want to move to next. I want to talk about some strategies, how to reframe the way that you think about consistency, and just how to start living in that 80% space instead of always chasing 100% and burning yourself out, as some of our listeners have already attested to. Before I do move on, we did get a message in. Andrea said, with me, setbacks from sickness, injury, if it happens a few weeks in a row, it's very hard to regroup. And I fully agree with this sentiment as well. I also think, as a side note, there's not enough, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe not enough research, number one, into how difficult it is to come back from either an illness or an injury. And I also think sometimes is it a cultural aspect? Like, if I use my example, or even people I know in sport who have been injured, I'd say some might have been injured frequently. Now, everyone's body is different, number one, but these people are not going out intentionally to get injured. Like, no one is going out for a run or to the gym going, I am. What's your intention? Oh, I'm just going out to get injured today. You're not. But yet, isn't it interesting how sometimes we put a characteristic on people? Oh, that fella, he's out, he's missing again. He's always injured. He can't keep his body right. As if it's something he's doing wrong or doing intentionally to himself. I just I just find that like it's hard enough inside your own head when you're trying to come back from an illness or an injury. And to have that compounded or added on by people putting attributes onto you very unfairly, might I add. Um, it's just such an interesting area, be kind of coming back from those type of setbacks. So thank you, Andrea. That's such a wonderful question. Hopefully, some of these strategies I'm about to get into for you will be able to help in any instance when you are trying to build out this 80% rule. Um, yeah. So let's jump into right. If you're used to chasing the 100%, it, it's not that easy to suddenly feel like you're letting yourself off the hook. That's what it might feel like. You might feel guilty. You feel like you might be lowering your standards. But I'm here to tell you what you're really doing is raising your sustainability. And there's kind of like a phrase in football or in sport, like a team can have a ceiling. The ceiling is like, as how high can they go? Think of that as your 100%. But it's really important to have a high floor. So that's like what's your minimal viable thing. So if your floor is at 0 and your ceiling's at 100, when things aren't working out for you, fine, you're going to go down to the 100. But if your floor is high at the 60, 70, 80%, like that's your minimal effort. Like when you can't do anything else, that's what you get to. You'll have so much more consistency over the long term. All right. Here's 3 reframes that can help you. Number 1, done beats perfect. I think this one is simple but very, very powerful. Like the workout that you actually do, even if it's shorter, even if it's not as intense, it will always beat the perfect workout that only existed in your head. Same with nutrition. An okay meal that you actually eat, it just beats that perfect meal that you haven't cooked yet. So, another client I did work with, they tend to spiral if they couldn't do their full workout. So if they couldn't do the whole thing, they'd end up not going. Like I didn't have the hour to allocate. I only had 30 minutes, so I didn't go at all um type of stuff. So when we reframed it to something is always better than nothing, she then started showing up. Some days it was 20 minutes instead of the 60. But then over months, that adds up to so much more progress than all of their perfect weeks that they were trying to do then and then falling off. So the reframe here is simple. Stop grading yourself on perfection. Start grading yourself on showing up. Number 2 is to think in averages and not days. So perfectionism, it zooms in on single days. I missed today. I suck. But real progress is an average. So you're zooming out a little bit. It's not a snapshot or one moment in time. If anyone does maybe work in operations or is dealing with KPIs or metrics, you probably know this. Like try look at something over a longer period of time versus daily metrics. One, that will drive you insane. They're up one day, down the next day. What's going on? But you're looking for trends, you're looking for patterns, you're looking for root cause over the longer term. And the same applies here. Like imagine an athlete in training. If they don't win a championship because they had this great practice, like in the NFL, when is that? In February? Starting right now. A team isn't going to win the NFL championship by coming out this weekend and smashing a team. No, it might start the momentum. Maybe they'll go on to do something good. But that one moment won't do it in itself. They win because of an accumulation of games, an accumulation of practices over months and potentially over years. It's the same for you. Missing one workout, eating one off meal plan, losing one day of focus. Those don't matter in isolation. What matters is your average effort over weeks and months. And I will encourage you, if I could give a little tidbit of advice, when you are looking at your health, you can definitely have blocks, right? You can have immediate blocks, but then I would also get you to look at it longer term. Like, what is the longer term mission thing you want to achieve? What is the identity you want to build? Like, how do you want to look at yourself in 3, 4, 5, 6 months to a year and say, I'm growing into the type of person that I want to be? So instead of asking, did I do it perfectly today? You ask, am I trending consistent this week, this month, this year? That's the 80% lens that I'd love for you to look through. Number 3, good enough is good enough. So this one feels a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, personally, I admit, for me too. I would say, especially if you are wired for high standards, but it's true. Good enough is usually more than enough. Think about work projects like that final 20% I've mentioned, that unpolished, usually takes as much energy as the first 80%. But does it double in value? Often no. Often it diminishes in return. It's the same with your health. You don't need perfect macros all the time. You don't need perfect timing of your meals or your workouts. You don't need this flawless 7-day streak, right? 80% adherence, it gets you most of the results. And I would argue it probably gets you there with a fraction of the stress, maybe a lot more free time, I'm guessing. So instead of telling yourself, I have to nail this or do this perfectly, good enough still moves me forward. Now, here's the key with those 3 reframes. They're not about lowering your ambition. I think that's the opposite side of the coin. Don't speak in binaries, guys. The next thing I'm doing exactly that. But this is not about lowering ambition, okay? Um, these reframes are really about changing the way that you measure success. And I think that's the key to the 80% rule. Done beats perfect. Think in averages, not in days. Good enough is good enough. When you hold on to these, the guilt starts to fade. You stop punishing yourself for just being a human being, quite frankly. And you start building the identity of someone who shows up consistently. Not perfectly, but consistently. And that identity is what creates real change then. So next, I do want to make this even more practical. In the next section, just want to talk about some more coaching tools that you can use, what I've encountered in my coaching practice, and just ways to be able to apply the 80% rule in your workouts, your nutrition, your routines, and even your work as well. So tools that take the reframe that we're speaking about just out of your head and put them into action. So let's go there right now. Okay. Tool number 1, minimum standards. This is such a simple, but I would argue a very effective tool. Instead of setting your standard as the perfect outcome, do set a minimum that you can always hit as well. So for example, if you're looking to work out, your best case might be a full 60-minute session. Your minimum viable product or minimum case might be 10 minutes of movement. You can get as specific as you like with this. You might say 60-minute walking session, running session, gym session, lifting, doing upper body, lower body. Like, you can get as fun and creative as you like, but make your minimum session easy. 10 minutes of movement, 10 minutes of walking, 10 minutes of being present in the gym. You have to choose whatever works for you. If you think about nutrition, your best case is probably have full prep and plan. Your minimum might be you add 1 veggie to whatever you're eating. Or at work, best case is, totally finish the project, write 3 pages. Minimum might be like make a start. The beauty of minimum standards is that it just keeps the streak alive for you, right? You stop breaking your identity just because the day wasn't perfect. You're still moving towards the person you want to be. So Another example, I had a client who set her minimum standard for exercises one push up. One. You heard me correct. One. She laughed at it at the start. But here's what happened then. She never skipped. And once she started, guess what? Oh, she often did more. But even on the worst day, she still said, I worked out today. That's identity power. Tool number 2, the 3-tier system. So best, good, and minimum. I think this one is gold if we dive in, especially for workouts. It does apply anywhere else if you want. Just get creative, create 3 visions of your plan. Tying in with what we did say about the minimum, but here you can have it just more tiered. Best case is the full version, the full gym session. Good case is the shorter, more simpler version, 30-minute body weights at home. Minimum case, the absolute baseline, 15-minute walk. Now, instead of all or nothing, you've now got 3 ways to win. And I've used this with athletes, especially ones who travel constantly. Instead of saying, I can't hit my program, so I'm just going to do nothing, they drop to the good or the minimum versions. Progress continues even when life gets messy and things get in the way. Tool number 3, the 80% check-in. So you can do this like at the end of the week. You don't ask yourself, was I perfect? You just ask, was I about 80% consistent? If yes, you're on track. If no, ask, what pulled me off? What's the smallest adjustment I can make next week? It is important to ask these objective questions to yourself as well. And I say objective on purpose. You do have to engage in honesty as well. But sometimes if you see like you aim for 5 workouts, you ended up doing 4, like you're at your 80%. If you ended up doing 2, like why was that? And that's not coming from a place of judgment. That's coming from a place of curiosity. I think this shift overall, it just changes your focus from perfection to trend. So over time, then you stop obsessing about single days and you start seeing the bigger picture overall. And going back to my coaching practice, I had someone who was just beating themselves up over every slip. And then asking them just to say instead, did you hit 80%? Or you can reframe it. Yeah, I missed that one workout. Okay, but you got the other 4. Like you're on track. Did you hit your 80% this week? And the results of that, with the example of my client as well, is consistency stays there then. And it stays for longer, not just for days. Tool number 4 can be around a flexible nutrition framework. Use this often as well with people working towards their health goals. Instead of aiming for 7 perfect days of eating, you can break it down. Like sometimes you might aim for 5 structured days and 2 flexible days. Those 2 days might include meals out or celebrations or simply tracking less. And it just takes the pressure off and makes the plan sustainable. And guess what? 5 out of 7, doing math in my head, it's about 70 to 80%. It's exactly the consistency that works long term. Tool number 5, the minimum effective dose in training. So this one comes from sports science. The minimum effective dose is the least amount of training that still produces adaptation. So for most people, it's not 6 days a week. It might be 3 sessions. For others, it might be 2 strength sessions and walking daily. Like I've seen athletes maintain incredible conditioning on far less than they actually thought, because they understood sustainability matters more than intensity. And that's what we were always taught to. I'm still playing Irish football, but when I was at like the top level as well, essentially, I have to look into the science of this now, but back in the day, about 10 years ago, it was like if you want to maintain like even 1 session a week of, at that time, like weightlifting can be enough to maintain. And it's the same with your cardio as well. It's a lot harder, and we do this unfortunately when we could do the all or nothing. You might experience it. You're on a roll, and then you stop for 2 weeks to a month. Oh man, how hard is it to get back into the swing of things? Whereas if you just stay consistent, you keep your base, your floor that we talked about, you keep your floor high. That's why this 80% rule is so important, to keep that consistency over the long term. So, I mean, For you, it might mean realizing that you don't need perfection. You just need enough to keep moving forward for yourself. Tool number 6 is the next rep reset. This one is also very simple but powerful. Like if you miss a day, a meal, a session, tying in with what I was saying, don't wait till next week. You can reset at the next opportunity. Missed your morning workout? Maybe you reset after work. Went off plan at lunch? Try reset at dinner. Had a turbulent or messy day? Try reset tomorrow. The 80% rule only works if you shrink the gap between the slip and the reset. So this tool just makes sure like one-off moments never turn into a wasted week. So here's the common thread with all of these tools. They build resilience into the system. They raise your floor. They stop one imperfect day from erasing the whole story. That's how you shift from perfectionism to consistency. That's how you stop burning out and then you start building something that's more sustainable and that lasts. So I can put out a challenge to you this week even. Try pick one of these tools. Don't try all 6 at once. Like, let's just pick one. Maybe it's that 3-tier system. Maybe it's that 80% check-in that you do. Maybe it's that next rep repeat reset that you do as well. And notice what happens when you let 80% be enough. All right, there are 1 or 2 questions I thought you might come up with. I want to go over with you here before we wind down. Question 1. Won't 80% hold me back from my peak performance though, Podge? I brought this up because it's a big one that I've come across a bit. People being a bit resistant to when you hear 80%, as I said, not glamorous, not great. Doesn't sound good, right? Doesn't sound like 100%. Oh, wow. That's a great number. The best number. And the answer to that question is no. 80% is what makes peak performance possible. Again, thinking about athletes, they don't train 100% intensity every single day. If they did, probably be injured. Maybe they'd burn out in weeks. Most training is done sub maximally as well, it might be at 70, 80, maybe 90, so that they can sustain over the longer period. The same is true with your health. You don't need perfect macros every day. You don't need to like nail every workout. Just 80% adherence is good enough to get almost all of the benefits. That extra 20% can be argued it costs a lot more than what it actually gives back. So the next question, I've alluded to it a few times, but how do I stop 80% from sliding into 50%? So the danger is real here, folks. If you treat 80% as an excuse, you'll drift. The solution is minimum standards. You define your baseline, the bare minimum you do, and you commit to it. So we gave a few examples, but maybe you say, even on my worst week, I'll get 2 workouts in. Or every day I'll have at least 1 serving of vegetables. Those minimums keep your floor high. Then the 80% rule is not about letting yourself off the hook. It's about creating resilience and being able to take a punch without falling apart. So yes, you need guardrails. But if you build them, 80% doesn't slide to 50%. Kind of tying in with that, I think a question I would get is similar. Isn't this just lowering the bar, Podge? And as I said, on the surface, it might feel like it, but lowering the bar isn't the same as building sustainability. So think about it like this. What's harder? Sprinting all out for 2 weeks or jogging consistently for 6 months? Anyone can go all in for a short period of time, but it takes more discipline to show up at a manageable pace consistently for the long haul. The 80% rule isn't lowering the bar. It's raising the standard of consistency. And you're not burning out as quick either. All right. There are just a few questions that I thought you would have. If you do have any more questions, feel free to drop them into a DM or feel free to drop them into the questions section. I see a few questions popping in there. I will get to those after this conversation because I can't answer them live while I'm in the talk. That would actually be cool. Oh man, that would be some feature if I could just post the question while I'm speaking, so I don't have to like rethink what did I say again. Okay, I'll note that. That is a good one for our Eng team to look at. Thank you everyone for that brainstorm. All right, just want to take us right back to where we started. Right, that guest question. Should I work out early in the morning or after work? I know it's the right thing to do, but I don't always follow through. So my answer to that question, the timing doesn't matter. Timing does not matter as much as showing up does. Morning or evening is not the deciding factor in your progress. The deciding factor is whether you allow yourself to show up imperfectly or whether you let the pursuit of perfect stop you from showing up at all. That's the heart of the 80% rule. Because when you chase 100%, every slip feels like failure. Every missed alarm, every less than perfect meal, every short workout, they all feel like proof that you can't do something. And then once you believe that story, that's exactly where we're going with the internal narrative, that internal self-talk. But when you live by 80%, those same moments don't necessarily derail you. You missed the morning, fine, I'll train in the evening. You miss a meal, fine, I'll make the next one balanced. You slip one day, that's fine, you'll reset tomorrow. Give yourself that permission. 80% gives you that margin. It gives you that resilience. It gives you that consistency. So progress does not live at 100%. I think nobody sustains that. Progress lives in the percentages below, like that messy middle, the 80% that you can actually repeat. So if you take one thing from this talk today, let it be this. Stop grading yourself on perfection. Start grading yourself on showing up. Because the question isn't, did I do it perfectly? The question is, am I showing up? And am I showing up enough? Am I doing it consistently? That all adds up. So that's the 80% rule, and I think once you start living it, you'll then realize that that's not lowering the barrier to entry. It's not lowering the bar for yourself. It's actually raising the standard. Remember, we're raising the floor. We're not trying to raise the ceiling. We're just raising the floor.